Well. We meet again for the second straight season. It's the Battle of Florida in the opening round of the Stanley Cup. Will the defending champions win again, or will it be a better result for the Bolts? Find out what the Locked On experts think on a crossover episode of Locked On Lightning and Locked On Panthers.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Battle of Florida crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making both of our Locked On podcasts your first listen of the day. For those on the Tampa Bay Lightning feed, my name is Armando Velez. I'm from the Hockey News, and I'm the host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and grateful to be joined as we preview this Battle of Florida, fourth time in the last 5 years that these two teams are meeting, than no other, with the host of Locked On Lightning and the play-by-play voice of the Clearwater Threshers, Josh Sperber. Josh, grateful to be connecting with you once again, and man, this is going to be one crazy series as we've seen with these two teams the previous three times.
And our teams might be rivals, but it's always fun when you and I chop it up, Armando. So welcome to the Locked On Florida Panthers. Probably your first time seeing a Locked On Lightning podcast, which, I get, but no better time than the present to celebrate one of the great rivalries in hockey and what I think is going to be an absolute classic of a first-round matchup.
The best way I like to put it is just a pure celebration of the game in two non-traditional markets, as these two teams have been the standard over the last half decade for these two. But let's go to the biggest storylines surrounding the Battle of Florida to start off. We're going to discuss this first segment, the biggest storylines of the Battle of Florida. Next segment number two, we're going to discuss the key players for each team. And then third segment, we are going to discuss under the radar players and then give our series predictions at the end. But let's start off with the biggest storylines for the Battle of Florida. For the Tampa Bay Lightning, Josh, what would you say is the biggest storyline for them as they come into this first round series, finishing second in the division for them?
I think one of the biggest ones has just been kind of the story that the Lightning have been on all year, and just more of the Lightning revenge tour than anything else. I mean, at the beginning of the season, we all talked about some of the top teams in the Atlantic Division, and I think it was unanimous that the Lightning would be the most likely team to be taken out of the postseason. And honestly, the way things stacked up at the beginning of the year, that's exactly how it looked for Tampa Bay. I'll admit that I was skeptical looking into this Lightning season, and I certainly didn't expect the run that the Lightning have gone on. But the Lightning have just continued to be an overlooked team since that Stanley Cup loss in 2022. And they've had some up years, they've had some down years, but they've been consistently in the playoffs. And I think for Tampa Bay, this is just their opportunity to show the NHL that they have never left. And there is no better way to do it against your rival team. And of course, there is no better way to do it against your rival team that happens to be the defending Stanley Cup champions. So you repeat the first round matchup of a year ago that started this championship run for Florida, and the Lightning, their rival, could be the team to end it. I just don't think there's a bigger story going into any hockey playoff series right now.
And you think about this with these two teams, they have gotten the best of each other, but they've also learned from each other. You think about like 2022 when the Florida Panthers got swept by the Lightning, that forced them to make a whole bunch of changes to look at themselves in the mirror with the other team in mind. Just like last year when the Tampa Bay Lightning lost in 5 games against the Panthers, that made Julian Breezeball look at his team and zoom out a little bit on what needs to do to improve with the Florida Panthers in mind. So I completely understand why they went in the direction that they did. And yeah, but my take on the division during our our contenders episode, along where we did it with Dave Morisuti of Locked On Leafs, along with Ian McLaren of Locked On Bruins. I had the Bruins winning the division, and yeah, that prediction does not look well as of right now. Well, not as of right now. It didn't end up being well, but for the Panthers here, I have three points that I like to make when it comes to their three biggest storylines. And for number one is a chance to repeat after their first cup. The tone was set from opening night on. They were not distracted by the whole banner lifting ceremony, and they were off and running from there. And to think that they had questions when it came to who was going to be quarterbacking the power play for them. They started off with Adam Boquist, then it went to Uvis Balinskis, Aaron Ekblad. Now it's Seth Jones. So they've learned to navigate some of their losses that they had throughout the offseason. They eventually had their Kevin Stenley replacement on the PK in Nico Sturm, which was an addition at the deadline. So this was a year about figuring out how to replace the guys that they lost in the offseason for them. Number two storyline for the Panthers is coming in healthy, as they were limping throughout the last month and a half throughout the season after Tkachuk went down in the Four Nations, used that LTIR money to bring in some guys like Brad Marchand, like I mentioned, Nico Sturm, Seth Jones, and use this point to mix and match. They already spotted themselves enough points to make the playoffs. They were never in a threat to fall out of it. So it was just about pacing themselves, which the Panthers also did in 2023-24 when Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour missed the start of the season. So for the Panthers, it was just about taking calculated risks. And we saw that towards the end of the regular season. And then number 3 point for the Panthers here is a growth spurt for them. And what I mean by this is the Panthers, they gave the Lightning the best series that the biggest challenge in 2021 when they won their second consecutive cup in that COVID shortened season. That was the most competitive that they had all throughout that run, right before they defeated the Montreal Canadiens in the final in 5 games. And then the Panthers it wasn't even close the second go around. The President's Trophy winning season, like I mentioned, it forced them to do change. And then last year, like I said, it was the growth spurt. It was the 12 to 14-year-old range on now getting up to the size of the big brother and then finally beating them in like a one-on-one match for him, or if you're challenging them in Super Smash Brothers and you finally beat them, some example like that. But then you think about the makeup of now where these two teams come into the mix here. Hall of Fame coaches, two Vezina winning goaltenders for them, 2 Selke candidates of, even though Cirelli hasn't won it, he's more than capable of being in the conversation. 2 playmakers in one of them being Nikita Kucherov on the Lightning side of things, point producers, him and Sam Reinhart on the Panthers. So same thing with Matthew Tkachuk. You have a whole bunch of everything when it comes to the Panthers and the Lightning. And the Panthers surely want to show that they have definitely gone into that growth spurt and with a chance to tie the all-time postseason playoff series at 2. So what do you think of those?
I mean, I think, there are so many different storylines I feel like we can talk about in this series. I think the matchups are always rife with possibilities, because you look at these two teams as not just 2 of the best teams in the Atlantic Division or the Eastern Conference, but 2 of the most just loaded teams in terms of talent. I mean, you talk about 2 guys that are very capable of winning the Selke Trophy. I mean, I'm sure you have said as much about guys like Barkov and Reinhart in that category than I have about Anthony Cirelli in terms of winning the Selke Trophy. Maybe even Brandon Hagel coming in with some kind of outside shot because of what he does on both ends of the ice. I mean, we could go for a full 30 minutes just breaking down individual player versus player matchups in these guys. And there aren't that many, I feel like, that stand out. You look at, Kucherov might be a little bit better than, Barkov or something like that. But then Reinhart might be a little bit better than Cirelli or whoever it is, or Gensel, however you want to compare the forwards. There's such little margins of difference in between these two teams. And I really think it's going to have to come down to one guy stepping up, whether it's, the the everyday player, the captains, whoever it may be, because for both of these teams, it's a different guy every single night.
Yeah.
And I think it'll just be really interesting to see who those players are that are really going to break out and take this series into their own hands.
Yeah, and the Tampa Bay Lightning having 6 20-goal scores, the Panthers having 5. So it's just you have a lot of offensive firepower between these two teams, even though the Tampa Bay Lightning do have the scoring edge there offensively, with being the team that has the most goals per game in the regular season through the 82 games for them. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss our key players for this upcoming series between these two teams in the Battle of Florida. And we're going to discuss that all next on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. But first, we are going to tell you guys all about wonderful pistachios. And are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, serving 1 ounce serving that has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm stacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Thank you once again for making both of our Locked On podcasts your first listen of the day, as once again, it is a game day here between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. These two teams finally kicking things off in the Stanley Cup playoffs, where we're like I said in my previous episode, a lot of teams will be playing their game 2s while the Panthers and Lightning will be kicking off their game 1. So I'm gonna pass the ball, in this case the puck, to you, Josh, to discuss your key players for the series here for this Battle of Florida between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning here.
Well, I'm going to quickly kind of go through every position group because obviously, I mean, I think you can't discount the goaltenders.
Yeah.
And for me, I think Andrei Vasilevskiy is the most key player in this series for the Tampa Bay Lightning because no disrespect to Bobrovsky. I think he's a solid goaltender. But we were talking about those matchups, and I honestly think there's only one where I find separation between the Lightning and the Panthers, and that is Andrei Vasilevskiy and Bobrovsky. I mean, look at the stats. One other goalie is on Vazzy's level in just about anything, and that is Connor Hellebuck, who is likely going to take home the Vezina Trophy. And something I have said for the Locked On Lightning fans, you've heard me say plenty of times, an East Conference and a Western Conference Vezina winner is really the only fair way to adjudicate it this year, just because of the dominance of both of those goalies. So, you know, if the Lightning can keep riding the hot goalie and everything else kind of balances out, you know, like as I said, this is going to be an incredibly even series between two talented and well-matched teams. And I think that something as simple as a hot goalie could push the needle. On the defensive side, I think for Tampa Bay, J.J. Moser is someone who I'd really like to see step up. He had a solid offensive start to the season, and he hasn't been as aggressive since coming back from his injury. So I'd really like to see more of him help with the Lightning defensive unit, as they have statistically been one of, if not the best defensive units in terms of adding to the offense, which is obviously the centerpiece of any Lightning attack. But when you're talking about a key player for Tampa Bay, I'm not going to tell you Nikita Kucherov, as obvious as that would be. He's the best player on the planet. I mean, he's going to do what he does. He'll take control of the series how he does it. But, you know, the Panthers have a guy like that as well on the other side. I'm sure that's someone that you're going to talk about, Armando, but I'm looking at Yanni Gourde as a guy who has come back into the fold. And the last couple weeks of the season, he has really started to heat up. And I think he's going to get a bit more of an expanded role in the postseason. And he's just a pest. He's a guy that is going to make the other team upset because he's going to, fit his way into little crevices of the ice and just find ways to poke that puck out and get it in open territory to one of the Lightning's goal scorers. But he's also a guy that can step up and sneakily be a good defender. Is he the best defender on the Lightning's roster in their forwards? Maybe not, but he's someone that I think could really step up and back into the leadership role that he had in some way during the last championship run. And I'm really curious to see how well he carries that end of the season momentum into the playoffs.
Yeah. And for Yanni Gord being on that top line with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. I mean, Nikita Kucherov can especially sneak it in on the back door, that's really how the Panthers really need to keep all eyes on him when it comes to this series.
Always.
They definitely did last year, but this is a new year for them. So I'm going to give 4 players. It's funny because the goaltender is actually not on this for the Panthers because their style of play allows them to be in the offensive zone a lot. They're Corsi Giants, so their structure allows a lot of block shots that Sergei Bobrovsky doesn't necessarily have to be Superman all the time. And that was a lot of the postseason run even last year for them. So Bobrovsky's actually not on my list. Not going to deny that Vasilevsky is the better goaltender of the two. But I have 4 guys for the Panthers. Carter Verhaeghe is one of them. Struggled this season. Can he break out of his scoring woes? He did have a 3-game goal streak for the Panthers to end the season. And he's been notorious for coming up big in the postseason. 5 overtime winners in the postseason, just right behind 2 legends, Maurice Rocket Richard and Joe Sakic. So he's in good company. And last year during their playoff series, 9 points against the Lightning, 5 goals, 4 assists for them. So how effective can he be? Can he break out of it just because it says postseason in front of him? Number 3, Matthew Tkachuk. This will be his likely. He shed the non-contact jersey. Paul Maurice was non-committal on whether he's playing, but every sign says that Tkachuk is going to be back for game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. How effective will he be? He's that net front presence that's important to take the eyes away from the goaltender. He can feed the guys like a Sam Reinhart on the power play from below the goal line to the slot and to get the points necessary for him. And of course, the sandpaper that he brings, the power forward mindset that he brings in the series here. 3 goals, 6 assists in last year's series. Can we see the same thing for him? Number 2 on this one, Brad Marchand. This is going to be really important. He's right now placed on the 3rd line with Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen. And I'm interested to see, especially because the Lightning do have home ice advantage here, how they're going to match up the Cirelli line or the point line with the top 6. And is it going to be the Nick Paul line against Anton Lundell? And there is, I do give the experience factor and the advantage to the Panthers here in the bottom 6. So that's really where the Panthers are really going to hopefully make a difference in this playoff series, where Marchand, 47 career points in 51 games against the Tampa Bay Lightning, 20 goals, 27 assists for him. And another one of those agitators for the Panthers here. And number 1, I think I mostly pinpoint this guy because of what's going on with the blue line, with the state of the suspension for Aaron Ekblad. He won't be back until game 3. I'm going to put Seth Jones in as far as the number 1 key players for the Panthers. I'm not worried about the Barkovs. I'm not worried about the Forslings. I'm not worried about the Reinhardts here. But these are the 4 players, and Seth Jones is the last one. First playoff since 2020, where he was playing in the bubble, logged a lot of minutes against the Tampa Bay Lightning in that series for him. And he's played well, that was against the Leafs, but they beat the Lightning the year before. But he was playing a big role to start for the Panthers here, and he's going to be running the point on the power play. Big minutes guy as far as what he's going to contribute in the penalty kill. He's going to be playing in all situations. So how can he and Gustav Forsling manage the matchups in these first 2 games, which are very important? These 2 teams are exceptional at home, especially Tampa Bay. The splits between home and road for Tampa Bay and Florida, Tampa Bay especially, is quite the wide gap for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Panthers manage in a road environment in Tampa Bay with with them not getting the last change, and how much do we see the matchups with, and how many penalties the Panthers could draw and have themselves on the man advantage with Seth Jones running that power play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially, as you said, with Ekblad not coming out till game 3, a guy who's going to be most on the hot seat in this series is their big defensive trade acquisition. I think that's a really good point. And I think that, the defensive units, I feel like if we're breaking down like one individual part of the game, both these teams are going to like that lamp. It's going to be the defense that is going to have to move the needle in the series for sure.
And I'm interested to see how the Panthers try to rattle someone like a JJ Moser, who's, although he's playing on the top pair with Victor Hedman, he's a +20 for what that's worth when it comes to plus minus. But the fact that he hasn't been in a stage like this before, or the Panthers are going to do when it comes to dumping the pucks in deep, and when it comes to just those board battles, and for it to battle it all along the blue paint when it comes to just disrupting both him and Andre Vasilevsky in the blue paint. So that one's going to be interesting to see how they're going to be matching up for these two teams here in this first round series. But we got a lot to get to more, where we are going to discuss some under the radar players, and we're going to also discuss some what each team would need to do to come out on top in this series. We are going to discuss that next here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning.
The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Third and final segment here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Lightning. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning your first listen of the day, as we are kicking off the Battle of Florida tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. You could watch where Sean McDonough, Ray Ferraro, and Emily Kaplan will be on the call. But you could also watch the games locally in South Florida on Script Sports and on FanDuel Sports Network Sun in Central Florida for those of the Tampa Bay Lightning fans here. So let's talk about some under the radar players here, Josh. And for me, I'm going to go with the two bottom six centers for the Florida Panthers. I mean, last year compared to this year, Josh, oh my goodness, the 5-on-5 scoring for Tampa Bay has just upped it up a notch. I mean, when you get a young 40-goal scorer and a guy like Jake Gensel, who I know you just recently did an episode on his 600th career point, he's just making a name out of himself. Has proven that it's not just him playing with a guy like Sidney Crosby, that he could play with basically everybody for him. But for the Panthers, I mean, the key is going to be defensive zone draws, especially when they are on the PK. They went 16 for 18 on the PK against Tampa Bay, including one game where they stopped 7 power plays for Tampa Bay for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work the defensive draws. Anton Lundell, Nico Sturm are two big ones who are going to be guys who are going to be definitely key contributors on the penalty kill for him. Sturm is going to be with Eetu Luostarinen, and then Anton Lundell, he's mixed and matched with different guys here and there. So we'll see if he's going to be paired with Brad Marchand for him. So that's going to be an interesting factor, where the Panthers top penalty killing unit in the NHL and top power play on the road this season. So I don't think the moment is too big for the Panthers. I don't think the moment is too big for the Lightning neither, which these two teams are just as mature as they come when it comes to this series, which is the great thing about this Battle of Florida, which I think is going to be probably the best one yet. But your under the radar players for the Tampa Bay Lightning coming into this series, who are they for you?
Well, first, Armando, just talking about the too big for the moment. I mean, these are two teams that have been there and done it.
Yeah.
The Lightning still have a very similar core. It might have been a bit longer since the Lightning have brought that cup home, but these are both two teams that are very similar to the makeup of Stanley Cup champs not so long ago. So, no, I don't think that's going to be a factor at all in this series. I think these are two teams that know exactly what's at stake, and they are just going to get after it. And I still think, though, that the small handful of Lightning players that have not been in a Stanley Cup playoff before are two guys that I'm focusing on. I'm not talking about JJ Moser again. I'm talking about Connor Geekie and Gage Gonzalez, because Geekie was added late in the season after Oliver Bjorkstrand went down with an injury. And over the weekend, we learned that he was not going to be able to play in the first round series against the Panthers in all likelihood. Obviously, if something miraculous happens, that would be great. But the Lightning are planning to go ahead without Oliver Bjorkstrand. And that likely means moving up a guy like Connor Geekie or Gage Gonzalez, both under 25 years old, both playing in their first postseason, both who still don't have a full 82 games of NHL action under their belts, even if you count preseason. These are guys that are new to it, and they ended off the season great. Connor Geekie came up from the AHL. He scored in the first two games after he got called up. Gage Gonzalez, since the end of January, since he returned from the AHL, he's been one of the most productive players on the Lightning, typically scoring from the third or the fourth line. Gonzalez had 2 points before he got recalled from the AHL in February. Since then, he has the rest of his almost 14 points, I think, to be exact, in the last 2 months of the season. For a guy who was playing his first full season of NHL action, incredible. So I'm just curious to see how the Lightning are going to structure some of those bottom six lines, because I think the top six forward for Tampa are usually pretty set. You've got Gensel, Point, Kucherov on that first line. You've got Hagel, Cirelli, usually Nick Paul. For the playoffs, my guess is going to be Nick Paul, but Yanni Gourde could go there. Connor Geekie could go there. Gage Gonzalez could go there. The fact that these young players for Tampa have adapted so well into John Cooper's system, and the chemistry has looked so great in the second half of the season with those guys, that could really make it difficult for Florida to defend some of these line combinations. And you can even look as far down as the Lightning fourth line. Zemgus Girgensons, it might not seem like a big deal for a player like him to be in his first ever playoff game, because he was kind of a quiet guy, usually a bottom nine liner on Buffalo, but he's played 770 career NHL games. Just doesn't matter that he's played about 10 minutes a game over the course of the season for the Lightning. He's got hunger. This is the first time he's tasted Stanley Cup playoffs, and he is going to absolutely want that. So I don't think that can be underestimated. And also on that line is Luke Glendening, who has been around before, sure, but he's also in this series has the best face-off win percentage of anybody else. Reinhart is literally right next to him. It's Glendening 14th in the league, Reinhart 15th in the league in terms of face-off success. But having a guy like Glendening, in that spot, gaining possession in a battle between two offensive giants, where just the simple act of having the puck could be enough to swing the tide one way or another and help, some of the Lightning passers unlock some of the goal scoring abilities. And obviously the same on the other side with the Panthers. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways I think you can sort this one out.
Yeah. And to think that both of these teams have just developed guys, and mostly I'm talking about the Gage Gonzalez for him. Time in the AHL, not a first round pick for him, and then just graduating with the system for him. And then same thing for Mackie Samoskevich, although he was a first round pick, stayed in school a little bit, was on the was a black ace for the Panthers just a few years ago in their first Stanley Cup appearance, and then a full season in the AHL last year, and then graduating. So to think that these guys have competed, been on long playoff runs and have been able to develop. It just goes to show up and down how much balance there is in the front office, and just how much these players just want to be in the system for these two teams, and just with the buy-in is what I'm getting to. And Gonzalez is definitely just a big product of that as well. So definitely good for him.
Absolutely. And you can see that buy-in up and down the whole Lightning system, because I don't know if there's another team in the NHL that also has it, that is in the playoffs itself, has its AHL affiliate in the postseason and its ECHL affiliate in the postseason. And the Solar Bears already have evened up their first round series. The Crunch are getting ready to go. And they had a really great second half of the season to get into that playoff spot. Big time boost to that one was Connor Geekie. He's gotten a team into the playoffs twice, essentially, if you think about it. And now he's playing in it himself. And again, it just shows how talented the Lightning are really at every level of making a championship caliber hockey team.
Yeah, unfortunately, this year for the Panthers, only their NHL and AHL affiliates are in the postseason, as the Savannah Ghost Pirates of the ECHL did not qualify this year for them. And hey, you know who else was in the Lightning system that led the AHL in goals? Carter Verhey. So definitely one who's definitely helped develop him. Hey, Stanley Cup champion with both the Panthers and the Lightning here. But now let's get to the moment that we've been waiting for when it comes to these two teams and our predictions for this Battle of Florida series, which will be like I said, fourth time in the last 5 years. I'm going to give it to you first. Will the Tampa Bay Lightning make it 3-1, or will this all-time postseason series be tied? So you get the floor first, Josh.
I mean, I think even if I didn't kind of have to pick the Lightning in this crossover here, I'd still probably pick the Lightning. I mean, these are two teams, we've talked about the home and road splits, and sometimes that can really be the deal breaker. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have had one of the best home records in the entire NHL. Their road record, not as good. The Panthers have been slightly better on the road, not as much at home. I think that is enough right there to move the needle, but I think this Lightning team is tired of being overlooked, and they certainly don't want to become the little brother to the Florida Panthers, because at the end of the day, it's all about Stanley Cup championships. It's currently Lightning 3, Florida 1. The Panthers fans have started talking since they won last year. The Stadium Series is coming up, where it's going to get a whole lot crazier with a lot more hockey attention brought on to the state of Florida. And I know that the Lightning players and coaching staff took personally where a lot of pundits picked them at the beginning of the season. And I think that is going to be injected right into the heart of this series. That being said, it's going to be a very close one, Lightning in 7.
Awesome. So for my prediction, I think of, like I said, Panthers special teams are both in the top 3 on the road. So I think this is going to be a real big factor on how they win the series. A lot of time in the offensive zone. And although Vasilevsky has been outstanding in the postseason with a .920 save percentage, the Florida Panthers have actually been one of those teams who have gotten to him more than most teams, even though he still has a great numbers against them, a .299 goals against average and a .911 save percentage. Hey, you take that from any goaltender, but both of them are below his averages. In the case of goals against average, it's up. And under Paul Maurice, the Panthers are 7-3-2 in Tampa since he's been the coach. So it's the Panthers have been able to get some road wins there. And also when you think about, I think the Panthers do have the blueprint, their style of play, and their ability to match speed. I mean, we saw that in also multiple series against the New York Rangers and against the Edmonton Oilers on how they've been able to stop top power plays. And I think the Panthers have what it takes to do it again. So I think they're gonna get at least one on the road and then find a way to win at home, at those games at home. So I'm gonna say Panthers in 6.
Wow.
Yep. So
bold.
Yeah. So we will see.
Agree on this though.
Yeah. And you know what? I say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes one way or the other, because these two teams are just built for championship hockey. And it's a shame that one of these two teams are going to be exiting early. Just like, hey, we anticipated it for Dallas, Colorado as well, even though that's not looking as competitive of the series now with all the injuries that that's going on the Dallas side of things. But hey, all eyes are going to be on this one, at least in the US, because Battle of Ontario will be going on at the same time on ESPN2 on that night, at least on Tuesday night. But Josh, this was great getting together with you. We definitely got to get together again, at least in the middle of this series, maybe when the series shifts to South Florida or in between one of the games. So grateful to be connecting with you once again on another crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. So for my listeners, tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Well, you can search at LO_Lightning on X, and we're Locked On Lightning on YouTube. Anywhere you get your podcast, that's where you could find us. And of course, if you really feel like tracking me down, that's my Twitter handle at Josh_Sperber. Make sure to follow us on X, Spotify, anywhere else.
Awesome. Josh, thank you so much. And I will see you soon, my friend.